The marble floors of Blackwood Enterprises gleamed as though polished for royalty, reflecting the cold light pouring through the towering windows. Every step Nathaniel Blackwood took down the endless corridor echoed with authority, the measured rhythm of a man who had conquered every challenge laid before him except the one that mattered most. He was 38 years old, master of a financial empire that stretched across continents. A man whose name opened doors and whose signature moved markets. Yet as the city roared 52 floors below, Nathaniel carried a silence inside him that no applause, no deal, no fortune could break. His corner office was a kingdom in itself. The mahogany desk had been imported from Italy, its surface polished to perfection. The walls bore evidence of his triumphs, photographs of him shaking hands with world leaders, awards encased in glass, stock tickers scrolling across the glowing screen like obedient servants reporting their victories. Yet the air inside the office was heavy, as if it to carry the weight of something missing. On the desk, untouched, lay a thin folder that Nathaniel had read a dozen times, yet could not bring himself too close. The words etched across those pages had branded themselves into his soul. Permanent infertility. The phrase was clinical, merciless, a conclusion delivered without room for hope or negotiation. He had survived the car accident 5 years ago with scars and a limp that time eventually healed. But the unseen wound was far crueler. That rainy night, when a drunk driver spun out of control and crushed steel against steel, Nathaniel lost more than blood. He lost the chance at a legacy that could not be counted in numbers or measured in quarterly earnings. The world saw a billionaire climbing ever higher, but in truth, Nathaniel had been trapped in that moment ever since, carrying a secret grief that made every achievement hollow. He loosened the silk tie knotted at his throat as though it were choking him and moved toward the window. Manhattan spread out like a living map beneath his feet, streets pulsing with yellow cabs, skyscrapers gleaming in the late afternoon sun, Central Park a patch of green refuge in the midst of concrete. His eyes drifted there instinctively, drawn to what he could never have. Families dotted the grass like brushstrokes on a painting. A father pushed his daughter on a swing, her laughter floating even this high above in Nathaniel's imagination. Twin boys race across the field, their mother chasing behind, arms stretched wide, hair flying in the wind. Nathaniel's throat tightened. He pressed a hand against the glass, its chill a poor substitute for the warmth he longed to feel. In this empire he had built, he was surrounded by marble, steel, and glass, but never by tiny hands tugging at his sleeve, never by voices calling him daddy. His empire was silent, and he was its solitary king. The intercom buzzed, shattering. The fragile moment. "Mr. Blackwood, your car is ready," his secretary's voice announced crisply. "Cancel it," he replied, his voice hoarse. "I'll walk today." He didn't know why he said it. He rarely walked anywhere in the city anymore. Perhaps it was the gnawing emptiness. Perhaps it was a whisper inside him that he needed to step beyond these sterile walls before they consumed him whole. As the sun dipped lower, painting the skyline with streaks of orange and gold, Nathaniel Blackwood stood in the glass fortress he had built and realized that for all his power, all his wealth, there was a single truth money could not rewrite. He had everything except the only thing he had ever truly wanted, and sometimes, when a man stops searching, life finds a way to place the missing piece directly in front of him. What Nathaniel could not know, as he stepped away from the window and into the cooling November air, was that fate was already waiting on a sidewalk, in the shadow of a restaurant, with a single plea that would shatter the silence of his world forever. The November wind nipped at Nathaniel's face as he walked the streets of Manhattan. Without bodyguards, without the black car idling at the curb, without any of the layers of protection that usually separated him from ordinary life, the city pulsed with a rhythm he had forgotten, the honk of horns, the chatter of couples hurrying to dinner reservations, the smell of roasted chestnuts from a corner vendor. He let himself drift, not toward any destination, but away from the suffocating silence of his office. For once, he wasn't Nathaniel Blackwood, the billionaire everyone wanted something from. He was just a man wandering the city, with nothing but his thoughts. Romano's, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, was alive with clinking glasses and velvet laughter spilling from its doors. A line of sleek cars curved along the curb, chauffeurs waiting, women in fur coats gliding past velvet ropes. Nathaniel might have walked by without notice, just another polished figure blending into the flow of wealth, had it not been for a voice It was soft, almost swallowed by the roar of the city. Yet it reached him, sharp and desperate, slicing through the noise like glass breaking. "Please, sir, help." He froze. Against the restaurant's brick wall sat a young woman whose coat sagged on her thin frame. Her blonde hair, unkempt and pulled back in a messy knot, shimmered faintly. Beneath the neon sign above her, dark circles shadowed her eyes, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. But it wasn't the woman who rooted Nathaniel to the pavement, it was the three small bodies pressed against her side. Triplets, identical boys no older than 5, their cheeks hollow, their small hands clutching at her sleeves as though holding her upright. One rubbed his eyes with tiny fists. Another clung to a tattered stuffed dinosaur with a grip too fierce for such a frail toy. And the smallest, the one in the middle, tilted his head back to look at Nathaniel. His eyes startling, piercing blue stared with a wisdom no child should carry. "Mama." The smallest whispered, "I'm hungry." The boy with the dinosaur pressed his face into her coat. The woman's cheeks flushed red, shame flickering like fire. She bent her head low. "Soon, Ethan, soon, baby." Something twisted deep inside Nathaniel's chest, sharp enough to leave him breathless. He had walked past countless beggars, countless pleas for change, but never had he felt this. Perhaps it was the boy's voice, raw and fragile, or perhaps it was because, in those three gaunt faces, he saw shadows of himself. Shadows of the childhood he had buried under steel and marble. "When did you last eat?" Nathaniel heard himself ask. His voice came out quieter than he expected. As though he feared frightening them, the woman's head snapped up, her eyes widened, suspicion and fear battling against hope. "We're fine. Thank you." "No, you're not." He knelt down, the Italian wool of his coat brushing against the grime of the sidewalk. He softened his tone. "I'm Nathaniel. What are your names?" The boy with the bright eyes puffed up his chest. "I'm Oliver," he said with a spark of pride, pointing to each of his brothers in turn. "That's Ethan, and that's Charlie, Nathaniel's." Gaze shifted to the woman. She hesitated, her lips parting then closing again, as if even her name might be dangerous. Finally, she whispered, "Caroline." Something stirred in him, like the faint ringing of a bell he couldn't quite place. Caroline, the name tugged at a thread in his memory, but he pushed it aside. Now wasn't the time. "There's a diner nearby," Nathaniel said softly. "Best mac and cheese in the city. What do you say we get these boys fed?" Her jaw tightened. Pride warred with desperation in her face, and Nathaniel saw the battle, tearing her apart. She wanted to refuse, wanted to keep her dignity intact, but then Charlie, the quiet one, tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, please." That word shattered her. Tears welled, and her chin trembled. "Okay," she breathed, barely audible. "Just this once." Later, Nathaniel's penthouse would feel different than it ever had before. Alive. The sound of forks clattering against porcelain, the triplets sitting at his grand dining table, their eyes round as they took in chandeliers, paintings, and floor-to-ceiling glass that revealed the city in all its glory. Margaret, his longtime housekeeper, moved briskly, setting down steaming plates of mac and cheese, roasted chicken, bowls of fresh fruit. The boys attacked the food with the hunger of children who had learned to survive on scraps. "Slow down, boys," Caroline whispered, mortified at their urgency. But Nathaniel just watched, mesmerized. He'd seen deals worth billions signed, seen art auctioned for fortunes, seen rooms applaud his speeches, but never had he seen anything so priceless as three little boys devouring dinner like it was the greatest gift in the world. Oliver tilted his head while chewing, exactly the way Nathaniel often did when puzzling over a contract. Ethan's laugh, a bright, infectious sound, made something ache deep in Nathaniel's bones, as though he had heard it before. And Charlie, with those piercing blue eyes, sat quietly, observing everything before offering a small smile. "How old are you boys?" Nathaniel asked, his voice gentler than he knew it could be. "5. They chorused together, then giggled at their own synchronization. "Almost 6. Oliver corrected proudly. "Our birthday's next month, right before Christmas." Nathaniel's heart clenched. December. 6 years ago this December. A memory stirred of a night. A woman. A vanished smile, but it slipped through his grasp before he could catch it. Caroline barely touched her food. He noticed how she wrapped pieces in napkins which she thought no one was watching, slipping them into her coat pocket. Nathaniel pretended not to see, though the sight stabbed at him. "When did you last sleep in a real bed?" he asked quietly. Her fork clattered against the plate. "We've been traveling," she said, her voice stiff, "trying to get to my sister in Boston. Sarah said she'd help us get back on our feet." "Where did you come from?" "Philadelphia." The shelter closed down. "We've been on the road 3 days." The boys had slowed their eating now, drowsiness tugging at their eyes. One by one, they curled into each other on the leather sofa, their small bodies tangled like roots searching for warmth. Nathaniel stood there, staring at them. Something in his chest cracked open wider than ever before. They were beautiful, fragile, and utterly haunting. Caroline's voice trembled. "Their father. He doesn't know about them. I never got the chance to tell him." Nathaniel's gaze snapped to her. He studied her face, her voice, the way she moved, the flicker of familiarity. He couldn't shake Caroline. He said slowly, "Have we met before?" Her expression froze for a heartbeat. He saw at the recognition she tried so hard to bury that fear washed over her features. Quick and desperate. "No," she said quickly. "I'm sure I'd remember meeting someone like you." But as she turned away, Nathaniel saw it, saw the truth flicker across her face like lightning recognition, buried under layers of fear. And for the first time in years, he felt it again, suspense, a sense that something long forgotten was clawing its way back into the light, ready to change everything. Nathaniel didn't sleep that night. His penthouse, usually so quiet it resembled a museum after hours, now carried the faint hum of life's soft breathing, small footsteps across the hall, the occasional murmur of a child shifting in sleep. It should have been comforting, but Nathaniel's mind refused to rest. Instead, he sat in his study, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face, while outside the window, Manhattan's skyline sparkled like a field of stars. Caroline's denial, repeated in his head on a loop. "No, I'm sure I'd remember meeting someone like you." The words had been too quick, too sharp, as though she were cutting herself off before the truth could escape, and her eyes her eyes had betrayed her. He had seen the flicker of recognition before she buried it under fear. The boys' faces haunted him even more. Oliver tilting his head the way Nathaniel did when studying financial reports, Ethan's laugh pure, musical, so achingly familiar, and Charlie, the quiet observer, his thoughtful gaze mirroring Nathaniel's own. These were not coincidences. They were fragments of a puzzle Nathaniel had ignored for too long. He opened a digital archive he hadn't touched in years, photographs from benefits, galas, and charity events. His finger hovered over the mouse, a strange dread growing inside him. He scrolled through image after image until suddenly he froze. There she was, Caroline Mitchell. December, 6 years ago. The photograph captured her mid-laugh at the Children's Hospital Gala. She was radiant, her blonde hair falling in loose waves, her eyes bright, alive. And there he was beside her, smiling in a way he hadn't in years. The caption burned into his vision, Nathaniel Blackwood with volunteer Caroline Mitchell. The air left his lungs. He remembered her now, not just her face, but her presence. She had been different from the others, simple, genuine. An art student waiting tables at the gala to make extra money. He'd spent hours talking to her that night, more interested in her passion for painting than the $1 million donors that crowded the ballroom. For weeks afterward, they'd met in quiet corners of Central Park, had dinners without photographers, talked until dawn about dreams and fears. She had been the one person who saw Nathaniel the man, not Nathaniel the empire. And then she was gone. No note, no trace, no explanation. He had hired investigators, checked hospitals, even searched the morgue. But Caroline Mitchell had vanished as though she'd never existed. Now she was in his guest room, with 3 boys about to turn 6. Nathaniel gripped the desk until his knuckles whitened. He could no longer deny what his heart already screamed. They were his sons, his legacy, his family. The first rays of dawn found him still at the desk, his mind torn between elation and rage. Elation that fate had delivered his children back to him. Rage at the woman who had taken them away. Yet when he thought of Caroline's hollow cheeks, her trembling hands as she refused help, something deeper emerged. Fear. She was afraid, not of him, but of something or someone else. A small sound pulled him from his thoughts. Charlie stood at the window in his pajamas, hair sticking up in sleepy tufts. He looked so small against the towering glass as he watched the sunrise bleed gold over the city. When he turned, his eyes, those impossibly familiar blue eyes, met Nathaniel's. "The city looks different from up here," the boy said softly, "like a toy kingdom." Nathaniel knelt beside him, his chest tightening. It does, doesn't it? Do you like it here, Charlie? The boy nodded solemnly. Mama slept all night. She hasn't done that in a long time. He hesitated, then added with innocent honesty, we don't have a daddy. Mama says he lives far away and doesn't know about us. The word sliced through Nathaniel like a blade. He kept his voice steady, though his throat ached. When's your birthday, buddy? December 18th. Charlie said proudly. Mama says we're Christmas miracles. He grinned, a crooked little smile that mirrored Nathaniel's own. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Do you have kids, mister? No, Nathaniel whispered. His voice broke. But I'd like to, someday. By breakfast, the twins had filled the apartment with laughter, chasing each other around Margaret's legs while pancakes piled high on the table. Caroline emerged last, her eyes brighter, her shoulders less tense. She even ate a full plate. This time, not just scraps hidden in napkins. You look better, Nathaniel remarked, studying her carefully. I feel human again, she admitted with a faint smile. Thank you, but we should go this morning. Go. The word hit him harder than expected. Where? My sister in Boston. She'll help us start over. Caroline lifted her coffee cup with shaking hands. We can't stay here. Nathaniel reached into his pocket and slid the old photograph across the table. Caroline's cup clattered against the saucer, coffee spilling, her face drained of color, her body stiffening like prey cornered by a predator. Caroline Mitchell, he said, quietly, his voice sharp with accusation and grief. December 2018, Children's Hospital Gala. We talked for hours about art, about life, about us. Tears spilled down her cheeks, unbidden. You disappeared, Nathaniel pressed, his voice trembling now with something more than anger. No note, no call. I thought I meant nothing to you. 6 years, Caroline. 6 years of silence. Her lips parted, trembling. You don't understand. Then help me, Nathaniel urged, leaning closer. Desperate, because all I see are 3 boys with my eyes, my laugh, my soul, and a mother who looks at me like she's terrified of the truth. The room seemed to hold its breath. Margaret had frozen mid-step in the kitchen. Even the boys had gone quiet, sensing something powerful shifting in the air. Caroline looked at Nathaniel then, truly looked at him not as a billionaire, not as a stranger, but as the man she had once loved. Her voice broke into a whisper. Your mother found me, and with those 3 words, the fragile walls around Nathaniel's world began to crack. Caroline's whisper hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Your mother found me. Nathaniel's heart thudded in his chest, slow at first, then harder, heavier, until it felt like it might crack his ribs. His mother's name, Eleanor Blackwood, had been a constant shadow in his life, a woman of iron and ice, who carved her son into the Titan of Wall Street by cutting away everything soft, everything human. Yet even in his worst imaginings, Nathaniel had never pictured her hands reaching this far, into the very heart of the only happiness he'd ever known. Explain, he demanded, though his voice trembled more than he intended. Caroline's gaze dropped to the coffee in front of her, her hands trembling as she clutched the cup as if it could shield her. It was after the gala, after those weeks with you. I was living in a walk-up in Brooklyn, waiting tables, painting when I could. One night she came to my apartment. She wasn't alone, there were lawyers with her. They knew everything, my school, my job, my debts. She told me I was a distraction, a mistake, that if I didn't walk away from you, she would destroy me. Nathaniel felt the room tilt. Destroy you? She called me a gold digger. Caroline's voice cracked. She said I was trying to trap you with a sob story about art school and a waitress job. She offered me money, a lot. I refused. So she made it clear she could ruin me in ways I couldn't even imagine. She said she could make sure no gallery in New York would ever hang my work. No school would ever admit me. No job would ever hire me. She threatened to sue me for harassment if I ever tried to contact you again. Nathaniel gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, his jaw tight enough to ache. He could see his mother in his mind, her cold smile, her tailored suit, her manicured nails tapping against the crystal glass as she cut down anyone she considered unworthy. I thought I was strong enough to fight her, Caroline whispered, her tears slipping freely now. But then, 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant, and all I could think about was her face, her threats, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. I knew she'd never let me raise those babies in peace if she knew, so I ran. I changed my name. I disappeared, The silence was suffocating. Even Margaret, usually so brisk and unflappable, had stopped clearing plates, her wrinkled hands hovering midair as she listened. The triplets were in the other room, their laughter faint, a painful counterpoint to the storm in the kitchen. Nathaniel's breath came sharp, ragged. His mother hadn't just stolen Caroline, she had stolen his sons. 6 years of birthdays, of first words, of scraped knees and lullabies, all stolen because Eleanor Blackwood had decided no one was good enough for her empire's heir. Those boys, Nathaniel said hoarsely, they're mine. Caroline met his eyes through a veil of tears. She nodded. The simple movement carried the weight of 6 years of silence. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want to take them from you. I wanted to protect them from her, from everything. Nathaniel pushed back his chair with such force it scraped across the marble floor. He moved to the window. Needed space, air, something to keep him from shattering. Manhattan glared back at him, cold and merciless. He saw himself in that reflection. The billionaire who had thought he had everything but had lived as a ghost without knowing it. His fists clenched. She did this, Eleanor, his own mother. She had poisoned everything she touched. Behind him, Caroline's voice wavered. She'll never stop, Nathaniel. If she knows we're here, she'll try again. She has the power, the money, the influence. Let her try. His voice was low, dangerous, vibrating with rage. She took 6 years from me, Caroline. She won't take another second. For the first time since he'd met her on that sidewalk, Caroline looked at him not with fear, but with a fragile flicker of hope. What are you going to do? Nathaniel turned, his eyes burning. I'm going to war. That evening, the storm began. Nathaniel didn't return to his office. Instead, he called Thomas Reed, his oldest friend and his lawyer. The two men sat in the study while the boys slept down the hall. Nathaniel laid out every detail, every memory, every threat. Caroline had confessed. Thomas listened grimly, his pen scratching across a legal pad. Your mother's reach is long, Thomas admitted. But she's not untouchable. If she threatened Caroline, if she paid her off, we can find a trail. Bank records, witnesses, even the scent of coercion could ruin her reputation. She used my empire to cage me, Nathaniel said bitterly. It's time I use it to break her. Caroline lingered in the doorway, pale and uncertain. She won't go down easily. She's ruthless. So am I, Nathaniel replied, his voice hard. She taught me that. She built me to fight her without even knowing it. Caroline's arms tightened around herself, as if bracing against a memory. She won't just come after me this time, Nathaniel. She'll come after the boys. His gaze snapped to her, unyielding. Then she'll have to go through me first. Later, when the penthouse was quiet again, Nathaniel stood by the window, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. The rage in his chest burned hotter than it ever had, but beneath it was something else. A vow the empire Eleanor Blackwood had chained him to for decades was no longer hers. It no longer even belonged to him. It belonged to Oliver, Ethan, and Charlie, and he would burn it all to the ground before he let his mother steal another breath from them. The Westchester Country Club gleamed that morning with quiet arrogance, its dining room filled with Manhattan's old money. Silver spoons clinked against porcelain teacups. Whispers of deals and dynasties floated between tables and sunlight, glinted off crystal chandeliers like shards of power. This was Eleanor Blackwood's throne room. She came here every week, immaculate in her lavender suit, silver hair perfectly set, cutting her salmon with surgical precision as if the world itself bent beneath her knife. Nathaniel had not stepped foot inside this sanctuary in years. The staff still remembered him, the prince of the Blackwood fortune. But when he walked in that morning, there was no trace of the obedient son she had once paraded through these halls. His face was sharp, his movements deliberate, his fury hidden beneath a veneer of control so polished it frightened even the waiters who dared approach. Eleanor looked up as he approached her table. She smiled, cold and practiced. Nathaniel, darling, what a surprise. Sit. You look dreadful. Are you ill? He remained standing. The air around him thickened. Other diners began to notice. Forks paused midair. The Blackwood air was breaking. The sacred rules of composure. 6 years, Nathaniel said, his voice low but carrying. 6 years. Mother, 6 years you let me believe I would never have a family. Eleanor's hand froze with the fork halfway to her lips. I don't know what you mean. Caroline Mitchell. Nathaniel shot back, the name slicing the room into silence. The color drained from Eleanor's face, though her expression remained composed. She came back into my life. She told me everything. Gasps flickered around the room. The name meant nothing to the wealthy elite, but the venom in Nathaniel's tone meant everything. Eleanor placed her fork carefully on her plate, every movement precise. The little gold digger resurfaces at last. I wondered how long before she tried to claw her way back. She had my children. The words dropped like stones into a still pond. Conversations at nearby tables faltered into stunned silence. Heads turned. Eleanor Blackwood, the untouchable queen, finally faltered. For the first time in decades, genuine shock flashed in her icy eyes. "Children," she whispered. "3 sons. Your grandsons." Nathaniel leaned forward, his fury finally unmasking. "While you sat here carving fish and pretending to be God, they were starving, living in shelters, sleeping on sidewalks. Because you tore their mother away from me. Because you decided she wasn't good enough for your empire." Eleanor's mask cracked, but only slightly. She straightened her spine, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "I was protecting you, protecting the family name. That girl was a mistake. You were blind with infatuation. She was the woman I loved, and those boys my sons spent 6 years believing their father abandoned them because of you." His voice rose, loud enough now that the entire dining room was transfixed. Whispers cascaded like wildfire. "Sit down," Eleanor ordered, her control slipping, her face tight. "You're causing a scene." "I intend to." Nathaniel's eyes burned. "Here's what happens now. You will stay away from them. You will never speak Caroline's name again. And you will sign over your shares in the company to me." Eleanor laughed, brittle and sharp. "You can't be serious. You destroy your own mother." Nathaniel's lips curved into something dark, something powerful. "You destroyed 6 years of my life. This is mercy. If you don't, I'll expose you." Every society page, every headline will read how Eleanor Blackwood manipulated her son, paid off his lover, and left her grandsons to rot in the gutter. "You think you've protected the family legacy. You'll be the one who ends it." The room seemed to lean closer. Eleanor's hands trembled against the tablecloth. For the first time, she had no script, no ready strike. "You become formidable," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Perhaps I underestimated you." "No," Nathaniel said coldly, "you underestimated love." He turned and walked away, leaving Eleanor frozen among half-eaten plates and half-breathless witnesses. A queen stripped of her crown, while whispers spread like blood and water dot back at the penthouse. Nathaniel was greeted not by marble silence, but by chaos laughter. Crayons scattered across the floor, Margaret humming as she folded tiny sweaters. Caroline was helping Ethan assemble a puzzle. Oliver was attempting to build a tower from soup cans. And Charlie sat in the corner, sketching rockets on scrap paper. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, drinking it in like a man starved. For once, the empire he wanted wasn't made of steel and glass. It was right here, messy, loud, fragile, beautiful. But even as warmth flooded his chest, a shadow loomed. Eleanor would not surrender easily. She would come for them again, and Nathaniel knew that when she did, the battle would no longer be about reputations or shares. It would be war over blood, over love, over who truly owned the Blackwood name. The suspense tightened like a noose around the penthouse walls. Because while Nathaniel had confronted her in public, Eleanor was at her most dangerous when cornered and somewhere deep inside, Caroline knew it too. That night, as Nathaniel kissed each boy goodnight, Caroline lingered by the window, her eyes on the glittering city. "She won't stop," she whispered. Nathaniel slid his arms around her waist, his voice ironclad. "Neither will I, but..." Neither of them could have predicted how far Eleanor Blackwood was willing to go, or how far Nathaniel would be pushed to protect the only family he'd ever truly had. Snow fell heavy that December, blanketing Manhattan in a hush that made even the city's chaos seem fragile. Inside Nathaniel's penthouse, warmth pulsed from the fireplace, filling the air with the smell of burning cedar. The triplets sprawled across the rug, building a lopsided fortress from blocks, while Caroline painted in the corner her first canvas in years, color blooming under her hand like life returning to soil. It should have been peace. It should have been the life Nathaniel had dreamed of in silence for so long. But beneath the laughter, beneath the quiet rhythm of brushes on canvas, a storm coiled. It struck on a morning that began like any other. The intercom crackled. Margaret's voice, shaky, came through. "Sir, it's Mrs. Blackwood. She's here." The brush slipped from Caroline's hand, streaking red across the canvas like blood. The triplets froze. Oliver clutched Ethan's sleeve, and Charlie, always the watchful one, turned his solemn blue eyes toward the door. "No," Caroline whispered, her face draining of color. "Not here. Not in front of them." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Stay with the boys." He strode to the door, every step echoing like a drumbeat of war. When it opened, the cold rushed in with her. Eleanor Blackwood stood in the doorway like winter itself, flawless coat, pearls gleaming, her icy blue eyes sweeping across the penthouse with ownership. Two men in dark suits lingered behind her, their briefcases heavier than they looked. "Mother," Nathaniel said, steel in his tone. "You were not invited." Eleanor's smile was razor thin. "I don't need an invitation to see my grandsons." Her eyes shifted past him, landing on Caroline and the boys. "So it's true. They do exist." "I must admit, Nathaniel, they are striking." Blackwood blood shows itself, no matter how diluted. Caroline gathered the boys to her side, her body a shield. "Stay away from them." Eleanor stepped inside, ignoring Nathaniel's attempt to block her. She gestured, and one of the lawyers produced a crisp envelope. He laid it on the table like a weapon. "A custody petition," Eleanor said smoothly. "Filed this morning. You see, Caroline, you've been rather careless. You never filed for child support, never established legal paternity. As far as the law is concerned, these boys have no father, which makes them vulnerable. But don't worry, I intend to remedy that. I have the resources, the power, and the name to ensure they are raised as true Blackwoods." Caroline's breath hitched. She clutched Charlie's hand, her knuckles white. "You can't just take them." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "Can I? Judges can be persuaded. Witnesses can be bought. And if that fails, there's public opinion. Imagine the scandal when society learns of a woman hiding 3 illegitimate children, trying to trap the heir of Blackwood Enterprises. Do you think anyone will believe your story over mine?" The triplets pressed closer to their mother, wide-eyed, sensing danger even if they didn't understand the words. Ethan whispered, "Mama, what's happening?" Caroline forced a trembling smile. "Nothing, baby. Nothing at all." Nathaniel's fury erupted. He stepped forward, slamming his hand on the table so hard the custody papers scattered like frightened birds. "Enough. You will not threaten them again." Eleanor tilted her head, unbothered. "Then prove it. Take me to court. But remember, courts move slowly. The media does not. Once I unleash this, your precious Caroline will be torn apart before the world." "Is that what you want your sons to see?" The silence that followed was a suffocating vice. Caroline's shoulders shook, Nathaniel's fists clenched, and Eleanor, satisfied, delivered her final blow. She pulled out a check and slid it forward with 2 manicured fingers. $2 million. "Walk away. Take your sons far from New York. Disappear, just as you did before. It's more than enough for a comfortable life, or stay. And watch me strip you bare in public, piece by piece, until you have nothing left." With that, she turned, her heels clicking against the marble as her lawyers trailed behind her. The door closed, and the penthouse was silent once more except for the sound of Ethan's quiet sob, muffled against Caroline's sleeve. That night, after the boys finally slept, Nathaniel found Caroline sitting in the dark, the check trembling in her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. "I can't fight her," she whispered. "You don't understand. She doesn't lose. She doesn't stop. If she drags us through the courts, if she turns the world against me, against them, what then? They'll grow up thinking their mother was nothing but a scandal." Nathaniel knelt before her, taking her shaking hands in his. "Caroline, listen to me. She already stole 6 years from us. I won't let her steal another day. Those boys are mine, ours, and I will burn everything I own before I let her take them." But Caroline's tears told him she didn't believe him, not fully. Fear had rooted itself too deep. And the next morning, when Nathaniel returned from a call with Thomas, the study was empty. The boys' toys scattered, their beds unmade. Caroline gone. Only a note remained on the counter, the ink smudged by tears. "I'm sorry. Eleanor was right. The boys deserve peace, not war. Don't look for us. Remember us with love, not anger." The paper slipped from Nathaniel's fingers. His empire felt like it collapsed in an instant. The silence was deafening, more brutal than ever before. Margaret found him still standing there hours later, his face hollow. "She's taken them," he whispered. "She's taken them again." But this time, Nathaniel Blackwood was not the obedient son. This time, he was a father, and he would scorch the world to ash before he let his mother win. The war was no longer coming. It had begun. The days that followed were not measured in hours or meetings, but in anguish for Nathaniel. The penthouse became a tomb, each empty chair a gravestone, each scattered toy a reminder of what had been ripped from him a second time. The note Caroline had left lay crumpled on his desk, smudged with her tears. But its words were a lie he refused to accept. Don't look for us. She had underestimated the man she had loved. He would look. He would find them. For 72 sleepless hours, Nathaniel scoured the city. He tore through bus stations, train depots, motels on the edge of Manhattan where desperate families disappeared into shadows. He mobilized private investigators, security teams, old contacts from every corner of his empire. He drove through boroughs himself, ignoring Thomas's warnings about exhaustion, prowling neighborhoods in the dead of night with Caroline's face burned into his mind. On the third morning, Thomas arrived at the penthouse with a thin smile of grim victory. Remember what Charlie said at the birthday party? His Aunt Sarah has a funny dog named Pickle. He dropped a folder on the desk. Massachusetts keeps public records of dog licenses. There's only one Sarah Foster with a dog named Pickle near Boston, Quincy, 47 Maple Street. Nathaniel was already grabbing his coat before Thomas finished. The drive up I-95 blurred into a haze of steel and fury, each mile bringing the memory of Eleanor's smug face sharper into his mind. He gripped the steering wheel hard enough that his knuckles whitened. The house was small, a neat little bungalow, with fading paint and a struggling garden. Sarah opened the door when they knocked. A tired woman in her 30s, whose eyes bore the same shape as Caroline's. At the sight of Nathaniel, her expression hardened. I don't know who you are, she began. I'm the father of those boys, Nathaniel said, his voice breaking. Please, I just want to know they're safe. For a long moment, Sarah studied him. Finally, she exhaled and whispered, they were here, but Caroline left this morning. She was terrified. Said someone powerful would destroy you both if she stayed. She glanced up and down the street nervously. She took them to a motel, the Blue Moon, 10 miles south. The Blue Moon Motel sagged against the highway like a relic from another life, its neon sign sputtering in the daylight. Nathaniel's chest tightened as he approached room 12, paint peeling, curtains drawn. He knocked softly. Caroline, he called, his voice gentler than it had ever been in the boardroom. It's me. Silence, then the sound of small feet pounding against the floor. A child's voice cried out, muffled but clear, Daddy, Daddy's here. The door swung open. Oliver flung himself into his arms. Ethan clung to his coat. Charlie buried his face against his chest. Nathaniel cradled them all, breathing in their warmth, the fragile scent of childhood. And then he saw Caroline. She stood in the dim light of the room, her face streaked with tears. Exhaustion and fear etched into her features. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. She'll destroy you. Nathaniel looked at her over the boys' heads, his voice steady as steel. Let me worry about her. Why did you run, Caroline? Her lips trembled. Because she's right. She can twist the courts, the press, everything. She'll take them from both of us. Before Nathaniel could answer, Thomas stepped forward with the folder he had carried. He laid it on the motel's cracked table. She made a mistake, he said. That check she gave you, it came from her personal account, not corporate, which means this wasn't about business. It was personal, and personal vendettas leave trails. I've already uncovered a series of transfers that blur the line between her company funds and her private indulgences. The IRS would feast on this. Nathaniel's eyes lit with a dangerous fire. He turned back to Caroline. We have leverage. She threatened you. She bribed you, and she's vulnerable. But she doesn't know I know it yet. That ends tonight. Hours later, Nathaniel stood in the house where he had grown up, its walls lined with oil portraits of ancestors Eleanor used to invoke as proof of their family's superiority. Eleanor sat in her armchair, regal as ever, though her hand trembled faintly as she lifted her teacup. You found them, she said, voice smooth but strained, impressive. You made a mistake, Nathaniel said, dropping Thomas's folder onto the table. Pages spilled across the polished wood. Questionable. Deductions, transfers disguised as donations, personal luxuries hidden as corporate expenses. The IRS will have a field day, unless you do exactly what I tell you. Eleanor's mask slipped for the first time. Her eyes darted to the documents, then back to him. You wouldn't dare, Try me, Nathaniel said, his voice sharp as broken glass. Here's the deal. You will never contact Caroline again. You will never attempt to take my sons. And tomorrow, you will sign documents transferring your company's shares to me. If you refuse, these papers go to the Wall Street Journal, the SEC, and the IRS. Your empire, your reputation, your legacy, they'll all burn for the first time in her life. Eleanor Blackwood was silent. The queen had been dethroned by her own heir. You ruin your own. Mother, she whispered. You ruined me, Nathaniel said, his voice breaking. You stole 6 years of my life. You stole my children. This is a revenge. This is justice. The silence stretched long, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. Finally, Eleanor's shoulders sagged, the iron in her spine bending at last. With a shaking hand, she picked up the pen and signed. When Nathaniel returned to the motel, Caroline was waiting by the window. The boys sprawled across the bed. She looked at him with cautious hope. Is it over? It's over, he said, pulling her close. We're free. Charlie stirred, blinking sleepy eyes. Forever and always? Nathaniel kissed his son's forehead, tears finally falling. Forever and always. That spring, in the garden of their new Brooklyn brownstone, they planted an oak tree. Each of them placed something special in the soil: a toy dinosaur, a guitar pick, a smooth stone, a paintbrush, an old house key. Together, they covered it with earth, their hands overlapping. The tree was small, fragile, but it would grow just like them. And on the morning of the triplets' 7th birthday, as children's laughter filled the garden, a figure appeared. At the gate, Eleanor, not the queen, not the tyrant, but an old woman in lavender, holding a gift she did not dare offer without permission. Charlie, with his uncanny gift for seeing through masks, walked to her first. Are you our grandma? Eleanor's lips trembled. Yes, she whispered. If you'll have me. The oak tree swayed in the breeze as the family gathered beneath its shade. Nathaniel, once sterile and alone in a marble empire, now stood, surrounded by life, by laughter, by roots that no amount of power could ever sever again. And for the first time, Eleanor Blackwood, Queen of Ice, felt the warmth of something stronger than legacy, love.